Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Cine Nerds, the show where our boss Lex makes us watch all kinds of movies and we throw out different ideas as to what topics we can cover. El tema de hoy es Old versus New. Vamos a comparar el clásico de horror de Evil Dead con su remake del 2013. Pero primero hay que presentarnos. Yo soy su anfitrión Josué y
Hi, soy Orengo.
And I'm Bells.
our resident horror queen. She can probably tell us a bunch about these movies.
Yes.
Of course.
Talk about
Evil Dead that I grew up watching.
Hmm.
And obviamente enamorada de Ash para siempre.
Of course, it's Bruce Campbell, man.
Ugh.
Man, I am so sad the Sam Raimi movies never survived the third one because a lot of people were saying that the secret plot twist was that you know how in every movie he has a cameo as a different character.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The fan theory was that he was actually Mysterio, and he would have been an awesome Mysterio.
That's
That
true.
was been incredible.
Yeah, no sé how true that was, but
Oh no, we will never know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So como digamos, vamos a estar hablando de The Evil Dead, hablando de Sam Raimi. This was his breakout film, or por lo menos it's the one that put him on the map. It's an independent film that spawned a cult classic franchise,
Mhm.
considered one of the classics of 80s horror,
Mhm.
que sorprendentemente had a remake in 2013. And
That good.
this was during the 2000s 2010s where almost every popular horror movie of the 80s had a remake.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Para ese tiempo ya Rob Zombie había sacado dos películas de Halloween, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Pero the Evil Dead was such a beloved franchise that it kind of felt sacrilegious.
Mhm.
Y solamente haber anunciado un remake para muchos es como que blasfemia que estás haciendo.
Yeah.
Pero sorprendentemente, this is a remake that a lot of people can actually take a step back and go, this is actually pretty good, all things considered. And we'll talk about that. Just overall impressions, ¿cuáles son sus experiencias con la franquicia de Evil Dead?
Bells, you want to go first? Oh, okay, I go first then. Pues mira, yo supe de Evil Dead original porque I saw it cuando estaba en bachillerato. So I was like around 2007, 2008. Que pues ahí yo estaba empezando a apreciar más cine que no fuera lo que pues yo veía en la sala del cine. Because I was very much dedicated to becoming a filmmaker. Pues obviamente me recomendaron ver los clásicos, entre ellos incluye Evil Dead, porque pues because it was an indie movie, they were suggesting me a lot of indie stuff.
Of course.
Pues la vi y yo dije, wow, con la forma que acaba, it's interesting that que tiene dos secuelas. And then I saw the second one, and then I'm like, wait, is this like deja vu? Porque la vi back to back. Y estoy so very freaking confused on what was happening. I'm like, okay, maybe there's a point to this. La termino de ver, termino with that bonkers ending. Yo digo, there's a third one. It's not even named Evil Dead anymore. Ya es otro viaje totalmente diferente.
Yeah.
It's freaking amazing. Es raro porque Evil Dead se nota que él lo hizo con cierta sensibilidad y cierta idea y cierto presupuesto que no tenía para la segunda. And then the second one is more like him refining that style and what he wanted to do.
Yeah, there's a funny story about the Evil Dead 2. It's both a remake and a sequel.
Yep.
It basically, the first half of the second movie is basically a remake of the first movie, and it picks up right. The second half is picking up right where the first movie left off.
Exacto.
And Bruce Campbell himself has said que through some legal bullshit, they didn't have the rights to the first movie.
Yeah.
So they were like, fuck it, we got the budget, let's just remake it, but better.
Exacto. Sí, él literalmente te da la excusa de que, wow, there were so many things I wish I could have done better. And I was like, oh, I have the chance to do it better. And so they did. And then, but they went gonzo, porque después como que la mierda with the fucking chainsaw and then the
No,
time
no.
traveling and all that insanity, es como que, okay.
I
you-
saw it. I saw that movie. We'll get to it in more detail cuando me toca a mí my history of the franchise. But I saw it on a Halloween.
Nice.
I was like, I want to watch a classic horror movie. Let's watch this one. My girlfriend decided she wanted to watch it, even though she is not a horror fan.
Okay.
And she was less horrified and more like, what the fuck are we watching?
Yeah. Yeah, es verdad. Es bien raro. Es que es una experiencia bien extraña, especialmente cuando el único contexto que yo tenía de Sam Raimi hasta ese punto era obviamente las películas de Spider-Man. And then they're like, no, he used to do fucking horror. I'm like, what? The guy who does Spider, Tobey Maguire, crying and Venom and shit, is the guy who did horror? Okay, dale. Cuando lo veo, I'm like, wow, okay.
It's surprising how many of the great directors started in horror.
That is true.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah.
I mean, Steven Spielberg, his first movies were Duel and Jaws. And even though they don't necessarily count as classic horror, they're horror movies.
Yeah, they're horror
I mean,
movies.
they are horror movies. And they are Jaws. At least it's a very like cult classic.
That movie,
Jaws is not a cult classic, man. That's basically the first blockbuster.
That movie basically ruined the summer beach season for that year.
También
There were a lot of beach towns that were really pissed at that movie because of
If
that.
I'm not mistaken, also it's considered the first day horror.
I can believe it. Por lo menos en cuestión de popularidad, it has to be.
And mainstream, yeah.
Sí,
Sure.
obligado.
Okay.
Yeah. But I looked at some clips because I wanted to get a refresh, and I actually did see this movie. So lo que pasa es que así mismo entró por mi cabeza y así mismo se me fue el remake. Sí, el remake, así, porque I was just seeing scenes. I'm like, yeah, I saw the scene with the tongue and she was split in half. So I'm like, I definitely saw that in the movie.
That I think it's a scene that a lot of people kind of overused.
Sí.
And overdone. Like that's the scene that makes the movie.
Sí.
I guess.
No, I agree. Yo cuando ahora mismo viendo las escenas, what I gather from the remake, y la razón porque claramente no me acuerdo del remake, es que habiendo visto la original, en granted la original es cruda, y esta es una versión refinada del remake, es una versión bien refinada, but since it plays it straight, el charm se va. And that's, I guess, the element que if you were hoping to see an interpretation de Evil Dead con Chavo, pero being faithful to the genre, pues then el remake funciona bien cabrón. If you wanted this bonkers movie al estilo Sam Raimi, then no funciona. You should just see Evil Dead 2. Ni siquiera Evil Dead 1, porque tampoco it kind of plays it straight. Lo que pasa es que no tienen los chavos para go nuts with it. Pero ya, la vi en el cine. I just remember porque estaba en la escena. Pero ya.
I remember being a child and watching Evil Dead, and like I said, falling in love with Ash and having that like campy feel that kind of began my love for practical SFX. And this was, I think, pre the thing for me. At least because I know that one's like by the same age.
Yeah.
1980s, por ahí. Well, the practical SFX is what caught me.
Yeah.
At least in Evil Dead.
It's
and
its
campiness and its originality and beginning of it all. The remake, though, it's the close-up horror, la cinematografía, the beginning of it was a lot more interesting, a lot more meaningful and more stressful, I guess, because they're both different beginnings, at least comparable in frame by frame.
The remake is also good to like see the progression of effects because they're using practical effects. They made a big deal in the promotions, like, no, we're using practical. And the effects on the remake are gnarly. There were moments where I had to like cringe or look away.
Yeah, and that takes a while now to do still. Even, having Saw movies and having all these very like bodily gore horror. It takes a while for a paranormal horror to reach that point where it's that type of cringe. Oh no, I don't want to see that. That looks painful. You know what I mean? Usually they tend to go towards more the paranormal, lo susto de cantazo, todas esas cosas.
Sí, los jump scares y todo. Yeah.
my experience with the Evil Dead is backwards, actually.
Mhm.
Back when times were better, my dad could afford HBO, so I was a kid. Early one morning, getting ready for school, I was just flipping through channels and on HBO. Oh, Army of Darkness. What is this? Is this some dark fantasy stuff? By then, I was already into Lord of the Rings. So I'm like, let's check this out.
Yeah.
And it was just this weird, dark fantasy movie about an army of skeletons attacking a castle. And I'm like, oh, this is a weird movie.
Yeah.
As I learned more about film, I learned about the Evil Dead. And I was like, oh, that's the third one. Okay. So the Evil Dead I always knew by reputation, but never actually saw it until that one Halloween where I'm like, oh, the Evil Dead 2 is on Hulu. I'm going to watch it. And I loved it. It's my favorite in the trilogy. I think it's the favorite for a lot of people in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And then for this podcast, I had to watch the first one for the first time. So I went backwards.
Oh, okay.
And the first one has a lot of that campy charm of the sequel, but they're still trying to play it straight.
Yes.
So it's not as unique, I guess, or it doesn't have that identity that it forged with the sequel, which to my understanding, the series Ash versus the Evil Dead is trying to like keep. I haven't seen the show yet. I've heard good
I
things.
have completely.
Okay.
And I mean, they were kind of, going along the line of the story of Evil Dead, the first one, with the Evil Dead as they call it.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about more the tone.
And it's just, I don't understand why they canceled it. It was actually very good and very well done. A very good balance of horror, bodily horror, gore horror, and comedy.
Yeah.
That was probably either too expensive or it didn't rake in the numbers the studios wanted.
It didn't rake in the numbers, for what I know.
Because that show kind of came in during the last days of cable's relevancy, right?
Yes, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found out about Ash versus the Evil Dead. Funny enough, the first time I went to Halloween Horror Nights, because they had a whole house about Ash versus the Evil Dead. And when I went in with the mentality of, okay, this is gonna be full on horror. I was laughing through and through.
Yeah.
Up to with the puppet. And if you guys want to see Ash versus the Evil Dead, y'all know about the puppet.
Yeah.
Puppet kind of insulted me.
Like, I am kind of disappointed. Apparently, if a planned sequel for Freddy versus Jason was Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be nice.
I remember
they would have tied the whole mythos around the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and like obviously Ash would have to step in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in what could have been, it was adapted into a comic.
Okay.
So you can look it up if you're curious, but it would have been cool to see Bruce Campbell like quipping, and Bruce Campbell and Freddy Krueger like quipping at each other.
Oh yeah,
and then Jason just looking at
would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But at least what I was gonna mention about Evil Dead the original, it went really straight to action when the Evil Dead 2013 one went through full-on suspense.
Yeah, it tried to take its time. So for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, the basic premise in the first one is a group of 5 friends go to a cabin in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere of the woods to, I don't know, drink and fuck, I guess. Because there's...
As any classic 80s and 90s horror.
Because there's no... And I remember I saw, like, who would stay here? This is white people shit. Who would stay here? Because if I were to stay in, like, a house in the woods, I would like them to have, like... does it have any nice hiking trails? Does it have, like, a nice... place to go fishing?
It's movie logic, sir. What are you talking
I know, it's just...
Did you see the bridge in of itself? Who the hell in the right mind would pass that bridge? Oh, no,
exactly.
they did.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, as soon as the bridge would have started making noise in my car, I'd be like, where? No, this is a straight up nope.
Yep, that's a nope for me. Yeah.
But
I remember one part of the original Evil Dead saying, how do you get like around the bridge? And you're thinking, okay, you can get around the bridge and y'all passed through the rickety bridge where y'all almost died. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. So they're just having the time of their lives, eating, drinking, and I guess eventually fucking. Though one of them is the sister to the main character. So what's she doing there as a fifth wheel out of these two couples? I have no idea. And they
Interesting.
find, and then they find in the basement this gnarly looking book with these old recording equipments,
Mhm.
and it's like when they turn on the recording, the guy who narrates says like, "Oh, I've been experimenting with this book. It's some fucked up shit," and he says the incantation, and that summons the evil dead.
Yep.
I did really like that
Yeah,
instead of them actually pronounce or trying to pronounce these words and
yeah.
then accidentally bring wake this thing up. It
It,
was
it
a recording.
it makes a whole lot more sense in the original than the remake.
That is true.
Because skipping ahead in the remake, when they find the book, it's just one of them stupidly reading what he's
Yes.
reading out loud.
Yes.
It's like, at least in the first one, they had the excuse that just some recording was playing, and
Yeah.
that was enough. That counted.
Oh yeah.
In this one, it's like, I don't know about you, but when I get a book, I don't often read it out loud. I just read it in my inside voice.
It's because they knew that the audience were watching, so they knew they needed to say it out loud because there weren't any close-ups of the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's just weird.
It's weird that someone in the 80s figured that out in script writing, and yet in 2013 they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I did love how it looked though,
Yeah.
the original one versus the remake. The look of the book. It
Yeah.
felt more I wouldn't say gory, I would say like disgusting because it looked like flesh, actual flesh.
Yeah.
And the other one was like, okay, it's fine. It's just a book.
I do miss the funny looking face from the original.
The funny looking face is dope. I like it a lot.
So the book is like, it is, I think, inspired by Lovecraftian horror. It's like bound in human flesh, inked in human blood. It's got these weird incantations that summon like these demonic spirits. And first one that gets possessed is the main character's sister.
Mhm.
And then it's just one by one, they all get killed and possessed into deadites until the last act of the film is the main character, Ash himself, just trying to survive, brutally being abused and emotionally tormented by the demons. The demon would like possess his girlfriend, and whenever he would like bring up a weapon to defend himself, the demon would switch back to girlfriend mode to try and play at his sympathies. And like the whole movie is just him trying to keep everything together, and he's slowly losing it. And I can see why in the sequel they took that to the logical extreme, to the point that it becomes like a slapstick routine of him like getting the shit kicked out of him, cutting off his own hand before he gets possessed.
Yep.
It's crazy. But in this first one, it's trying to play it straight. So you're supposed to feel bad for this guy for what he's going through.
Yep.
But because of the budget that, or the lack thereof, they had, and just how far effects were back in those days in the early 80s, a lot of the effects, I don't feel that they've aged that well.
No. There's a certain charm to it, but
there is. That is the main reason you would want to watch it. One, because it's the first one of the series, and B, because because there is a charm to it. You can tell it's like these were a bunch of guys who are like, let's make the gnarliest horror movie we can, and they did it. There's a whole book about it, written from Bruce Campbell's perspective, because as you would expect for that kind of movie with those kind of creative camera shots and effects, it was a nightmare to film.
Oh yeah,
no pun intended. But they put their everything in it, and I think it shows, and that's why it became such a classic.
And it has its charm because, at least for horror fans like me, that we are very inclined to watch more of the 80s and 90s horror movie. It went straight into my all-time favorite top 10 80s movies, right next to some of the really, really culty ones, like Stay Away Camp or the Reanimator.
Oh, Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp.
Is that the one where the twist in the end was that the killer was the girl, but the girl was actually a boy?
Yeah, and funny enough, with that movie, they paid a hobo $200 to, completely be naked in front of the camera.
Oh, that's another movie that has a remake that we might have to look into with this
It
sub
has a
series.
remake.
Or either that or like a revival, an attempt of a revival or
Yeah.
something.
No me he enterado.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a franchise. That's a whole franchise.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Bob Briggs will get a kick out of it. But
Yeah.
back to the Evil Dead, there's another thing that I felt kind of uncomfortable in a good way, and it's the laughters in the original.
Mm,
The
Yeah.
laugh,
yeah.
and to a point, at first you think, okay, it's creepy. It's very creepy, very eerie. But once it keeps going and going, and you're like, okay, this is a little bit
Yeah.
much.
So my experience with the laughters, whenever they would start laughing, particularly the girlfriend was like, "Oh, this is kind of creepy." Now it's annoying. Now it's very annoying. Now it's turning back into creepy. Make it stop.
Yeah.
It got a little bit too much.
Subtlety is not the forte of this series. It's like, no, it'll keep hammering you until it, or bash you over the head with it
The
until
audio
you're
balance
annoyed.
is really off, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That first movie, I think the main problem is we're so, especially through cultural osmosis, we expect a certain tone in the Evil Dead series that this first one hasn't quite yet grasped. So you could see there's elements there, but it's kind of undercooked. So that's something to look to look out for if you ever decide
And
to watch
being
this
of the
movie.
beginning of it all,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it doesn't even feel like it's an Evil Dead movie, even though it was the one that made it what it is to be.
Mhm.
The remake, in my opinion, made it a lot better with its foreshadowing for its deeper lore, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Not to mention, this first one has a scene. It's a very infamous scene.
Mhm.
One so infamous that Sam Raimi himself has said, in hindsight, I I would not have filmed that scene if I were to make this movie today.
Yeah.
As I said, the first character that is possessed is the sister character.
Mhm.
And there's this sequence where she runs into the woods and these tree branches kind of wrap around her.
Yeah.
And there's no easy way to say this. A tree rapes her.
Yeah.
Now,
Essentially.
he said at the time they were looking to make the movie as shocking as possible, which
Mhm.
I kind of get the sentiment. It's just the way it's presented. There's a point where like one of her boobs slips out. It's very gratuitous.
Mhm.
And it's
And
still an 80s movie where they just didn't really give a shit
yeah,
about,
definitely.
nudity and all that stuff, but the SA of it all, they just wanted that impactful, oh, I just got SA'd by a tree.
Mhm.
And it's that they want it to be shocking for the sake of shocking, but they kind of didn't do it in a way that I think works. Look, rape is a very touchy subject in art in general.
Mhm.
If you absolutely have to touch upon this topic, um, you got to be careful on how you address it. And the remake actually takes that element and turns it around in an interesting way, which we'll discuss later. But in this original, it was just there because, oh, it's shocking. And it's like, well, at least the remake took that element and turned it into a plot point
Mhm.
and like a thematic point. In the remake, interestingly, we should we discuss the remake from top to bottom, or can we kind
Sure.
of jump
We
around?
can jump around. I don't mind. Yeah.
So in the remake, the sister is the final survivor, not not the brother, not the
Yes.
Ash stand-in, who is
Mhm.
Yeah.
not named Ash out of respect for Bruce Campbell, who said, "No, I do not want to give up my character
Yeah.
to this kid."
Oh,
Like
who
no,
wouldn't?
yeah,
Yeah.
like no offense to this kid, but Ash is my baby.
Mhm.
So they call him David. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Now, in the remake, the tree scene is still framed like a rape scene.
Mhm.
But rather than it being gratuitous and showing her boobs out and stuff, it's shown in all its horrific splendor. She's
Mhm.
being hurt. She's struggling. It's it's very disturbing.
They
And
did a
then
good job with suspense,
yeah,
in my
and but then she's the final survivor through a loophole. Uh, the only way she can be free, anybody in this series can be freed from the possession, is if they die. So they find a loophole. She technically dies, but she's brought back to life through defibrillation.
Yeah.
And now, and just when you think that she and her brother are gonna get away, her brother gets stabbed. He lights the house on fire to kill all the remaining demons, and she has to face the final boss by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, it's more of a rape revenge movie. You can see it that way because this same demonic force that has been tormenting her the whole movie, who used her body to kill her friends, she now gets to kill it.
Yeah.
So it turns it's still touching upon a very rough subject, but I just think it's managed a little better. At the very least, it gives the victim
the main, I guess, topic that this remake tried to go for, because it, like I said, it's not completely the original Evil Dead. It's not
yeah
timeline.
Like in contrast to the original, rather than it being about a bunch of kids going in the middle of nowhere to smoke and fuck, it's it's the sister character Mia. She's a drug addict. They got rid of her drugs. They took her in the middle of nowhere, so it makes a bit more sense why she's in the middle of nowhere, away from any access to any drugs. And it's like, okay, we're gonna keep you here for a weekend while you go through the withdrawal.
Yeah.
And then they stumble upon the books. So it's weird because they have a smarter setup, but then they have like a dumber inciting incident by just having one of the characters read the book out loud.
Yeah, which, we always have that one person in our friend group that will just
read it out loud to the audience. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I can't tell you the last time I hung out. You can ask Lex. I can't tell you the last time we hung out with a bunch of buddies and we found an evil demonic book and they started reading out loud.
Am I right, guys? Happens all the time.
Yeah, I had to gouge my bed.
But at least in my friend group, I'm the smart one enough to say, "Shut the fuck up, you dumbass."
Yeah, I had to rip out my rip out my friend's heart, still beating hard in front of them. That was a great time.
Do you think it was just a decision just to not be the same as the original? Y no se le ocurrió nada más clever, so they were like, fuck it, just make one of them read it.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been smart to do the way that the original did because it's not unique.
Yeah, but the prologue shows that it kind of went down differently in this remake. The movie starts with a prologue, and what I love about this prologue is that at first I thought, oh, they're going more down to earth. This is more horrific. We see a girl like tied into a pole and these people chanting these prayers, and the dad is about to light her on fire. He says like, oh, baby, you killed your mom. And you're possessed, baby. I gotta burn you. And you're like, this is horrific. Are they going for like a cult thing? And then like her eyes turn on and she starts cursing like Freddy Krueger, and it's like, oh, there's the spirit of the franchise.
There it is.
There it is. And then the dad like blows her head off with a shotgun, and it looks like a PlayStation 2 game, like in Grand Theft Auto, with headshots would just make people's heads explode. Yeah. It blew up like a grape, and I was like, okay, there it is. And it's like a microcosm, and it sort of serves as a microcosm of the film, because at first they go for like a really serious, down to earth story. It's a bunch of friends coming together to help this girl through drug withdrawal, all the while some really weird, creepy shit is going on around them. And then as the movie goes on, it gets gnarlier and crazier. Each kill more gruesome than the last, until the end. There's a literal rain of blood while the girl rips her hand off to escape a car that fell on top of her.
Okay, hold on. Now I want to ask that question, like the ones that I mentioned before. Which do you guys consider the most goriest out of the two? Because you see how detailed the practical effects in the original is, but then you have literal blood rain in the remake.
Yeah, but the original also went for, in their effects, they attempted to also depict stuff like pus and and
Which
rot
is
and
so interesting, even though now you can see like what different kinds of utensils or
materials. Yeah,
Materials.
they
you can
need to use to
tell
make it.
it's mostly clay
Yeah.
and claymation and
It's
putty.
Yep.
But
purely claymation.
they tried to like go beyond just blood and gore.
Mhm.
They tried to simulate rot,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which this remake kind of just stuck to the gore.
Yeah.
Very visceral gore. The scene
Mm.
where she rips out her own hand, you see each ligament and tendon just
Mhm.
clinging on as she pulls away. I had to look away from that.
That
Yeah.
one I had to look away
Like
as well.
I play Mortal Kombat and I can stomach that easier than this shit. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
So would you argue that the original is more bodily horror than gore?
Yeah, the original
It's more
tried to
disgusting, I guess. Is the word?
it tries to go for the more disgusting. The biggest
It's in the
problem,
in the genre of
Mhm.
bodily horror.
Yeah.
the biggest knock against the original is just the time it was released plus the budget they had.
Mostly the budget, because movies in the 80s that attempted to do this,
Yeah,
they work like The Fly, or just
yeah.
Yeah,
But
the thing.
so
Mhm.
the remake is almost more effective, at least in terms of its gore. But the
Claro.
remake had a big budget behind it,
Claro. Yeah.
so
And
it's almost
20
unfair
or
to
30 years of advanced technology in
yeah.
these things. So.
Yeah,
There's
and all that.
a lot of people have talked about it, like the scene where the girl is picking at her own face with a mirror shard. The guy pulling out a needle out his eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like those are really gnarly.
I remember
Uh,
the scene with the eyes. That's
and
like
the original, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
and that was
that's
really cool to watch. At least when I was younger, because now it was like okay.
Yeah.
But when I was
it,
younger, that was
I mean the blood looks more like acrylic than anything, but it's still a cool scene.
so. There is a reason why most blood, or at least those scenes with blood in them, they looked a little bit more opaque. You could say in the 80s is because they needed to contrast that on camera.
Yeah, especially back then where color grading wasn't as easy as it is now.
I mean, Technicolor wasn't that great,
Yeah,
It was revolutionary.
there was a whole chemical process behind the color.
Yeah, it's a huge ass process.
Yeah, that's why you can see this as far back as the early Hammer films in the 50s. That those are some of the first big mainstream color films that showed off blood, and that blood looks like Kool-Aid.
Exacto. Yeah.
Definitely.
But that's the whole point. It's like this is the first time we had it in color. We really want to accentuate it. Plus, if we're afraid that if we don't make it bright enough, it'll not pick up as well on film or something. There was a whole technical reason behind it.
Definitely.
It does lead to a very.
It makes like bread paint and
cornstarch. Yeah.
That's what they did to make it like all gooey.
And
Yeah.
biscuits.
Which was apparently horrible to take off.
Oh, I mean, I'm a horror actress at the same time. I know how hard it is to take off blood. And no, it's not real blood, guys.
I was just about to
ask. Okay. I was just because you didn't specify, so.
Okay. Do not call the cops. I am a horror actress, and I've dealt with different styles of stage blood, so coagulated, all that stuff, and all kinds of blood are hard to take off.
Lovely.
But then stain,
especially the real one, right?
yeah, that one doesn't stain as much.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
That's the fun. That's the ironic bit.
The stage blood is the one that stains a lot, and vampire blood, just y'all do not put vampire blood close to your mouth because te van a anestesiar.
Oh.
Only once I put them on the side of my mouth because I had to do a little bit of a quick makeup routine to go into my position because I was late. And I did not feel my mouth throughout the whole thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I would much rather use the old school original paint and corn syrup versus the vampire blood.
It can lead to a charming aesthetic when used right.
Yeah.
Yes, because I remember a couple of, I think Rabid was one of them that used it a lot. And there's other ones I don't remember right now. I can make a list eventually. And
I mean, I'm not sure if this counts, but Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow was a homage to Hammer horror, so
Yes,
it also had like very bright blood. So did speaking of Tim Burton, so did Sweeney Todd.
Oh yeah, that is an extreme amount of blood that they used. Pounds and pounds of it. I think half of the budget was on blood.
Yeah, that tracks.
Which you could say also for Evil Dead remake, because you have never seen Rain be bloody like that except for Carrie.
Yeah.
And even then, Carrie's just one scene.
It's just one scene. It's just being dropped on her body, but it's the only time that you see it coming from above. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a literal rain of blood while this girl is like just desperately trying to start a chainsaw to defend herself.
Yep.
And for some reason, even though if you speak about it on paper, it sounds kind of stupid. On the scene was incredible.
Yeah,
I thought it was so good to a point where I'm like kind of idolizing whoever made the idea.
Yeah, so like I was live tweeting as I was watching to you guys, as I tend to do when I'm watching the movies for this show. And like the first thing that came to my mind was, so after the prologue was just that the dialogue early on, it's almost completely exposition.
Yeah.
And they don't talk as any human being would talk. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I actually have it here that you kind of, for some reason, you were mentioning the dog.
Yeah.
You're like, we all know what's going to happen when there's an animal with them, right?
Yeah.
At least that's how horror has depicted it so many times that you just kind of expect, the dog is going to die. Oh, the cat's going to die.
Definitely.
I was like, oh God, no. And it's like, there's almost no point to even have the dog.
I mean,
it depends. I mean, depends on
the
target audience you want to kind of apuñalar.
Exacto, because they might be like, oh, humans are dying. You kill a dog, though.
And then you start crying like a
Exacto.
bitch.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm one of them. I know. It's like, nope. So much nope.
So in that live tweet, you kind of mentioned the whole "I'm your brother, of course I came." The clunkiness of the dialogue.
Yeah. And it's very exposition heavy. Almost every line in dialogue is just to give details, and it's like it doesn't feel very natural.
And it's very set up too, because then you mentioned the whole shit, something burned here, and they went flashback to the pool scene.
Yeah.
Which I also thought the same thing as you, that was, it wasn't necessary.
Yeah. They find the pole where they burned the girl in the prologue. Keep in mind, this is like 15 minutes after the prologue.
Yeah.
And they still feel the need to show a quick flash of the prologue. And it's like, dude, we literally just saw that. You don't need to show us.
It's anime rules. Every time they speak about something, they just flash back to the pilot episode.
Yeah.
All the time.
Anime rules.
But it was the case that they were just trying to fill in as much as they could, because probably they didn't meet the exact time.
Yeah, this movie's actually, the remake's actually surprisingly short.
Mm-hmm.
How short was it again?
Like an hour and a half, an hour 40.
I mean, I've seen shorter. You can get away with like 80 minutes.
Well, true, but like
they probably had some test audiences, and they might have been confused at some point, and they might have told them to, like, you got to make sure that people understand this thing. So hence why there's the flashback, or hence why there's some dialogue that's a little wonky, because probably they were like a bit confused. Which, I mean, it's kind of weird that they will be confused, because this is pretty straightforward, but. Yeah. Some of those decisions don't have to do exactly with the script or how they filmed it or how they did everything or the editing. It just happens that test audiences are idiots sometimes, and they just have to fill the blanks.
Man, we could probably fill a whole list of movies that were ruined by test audiences.
All the time. It happens all the time.
We can have another list for that.
And to the point
it's not going to end.
To the point of like, why do y'all do it then?
Yeah.
And like, I Am Legend is one of the most infamous ones for me.
Yeah.
Like, test audiences didn't like the original ending, but the original ending was so fucking poignant.
Yep.
Like, it's called I Am Legend because he's become the boogeyman to these monsters.
Mm-hmm. That's too deep, man.
and that fucked them, and it fucks him up to know that, and he doesn't, and more importantly, he doesn't die, so he has to live with that.
Yeah.
Ah,
Too confusing.
Well, at least for what I saw,
Mm-hmm.
the 2013 Evil Dead is 92 minutes in total,
That's
fine.
and the original 1981 Evil Dead is 85.
Yeah, it's even shorter. Of course, it's
It's
lean.
It's a
Lean.
little bit
Mhm.
more than the original,
and even then, I think it's mostly because of the prologue.
but
Exactly.
still as short, like equally or maybe less shorter
Mm-hmm.
to me, at least the 2013 one.
Yeah, because once it gets going, it goes at a breakneck speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very consistent speed versus the original that was like, full throttle. Let's just do action from the beginning.
Yeah.
And the remake definitely feels like it's both retelling the story while also and trying to pay its respect while also trying to veer off and do its own thing. So I can it's what a remake should do.
Yeah.
It's just when you're going to compare it to such a classic as the original, it's never really going to hold up. Even though I could almost make the argument that the remake is more entertaining than the original, just because when you watch the original, you kind of have the preconceived notion you're expecting to see what we see in Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Ash versus the Evil Dead, but it's not there yet. So there's a part of you that's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see Bruce Campbell. I want to see him ham it up.
Yeah.
And he's playing it so low key here. Meanwhile, in the remake, I don't recognize any of those actors. So yeah, you guys can.
It's like it's completely new, just almost same sort of storyline, but completely new characters.
Yeah.
Which we've seen happen way too many times before.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that makes it any like even the remotely relevant to people or maybe people remember it, it's because it's called Evil Dead. Si hubiera llamado otra cosa, people would
that's also part of the problem.
Situation if they called it differently.
See?
Yeah, that's part of the problem and why remakes are done to begin with.
Yeah.
Because of that name recognition.
Sí. No, eso es verdad.
That you had to live up to that expectation that, and not just because of the name, but because of the fan base or the fans behind them. They're gonna expect similarities, a lot of similarities in this remake because they want to relive that nostalgia from the original.
Yeah.
It's so weird when you're doing like a reboot or a remake. Like audiences get rightfully pissy if it's too similar.
Of course.
Because then what's the point?
Yep.
But then if it veers too far away from the spirit of it, it's like.
Also, what's the point? Because then you
like,
took the name in name only. And you
it's like okay.
There's never gonna be an in between because
exactly. I can just see like these studios going like, what do you guys want? We want the same but different.
Exactly.
Then they give you that, and you're like, no, I want the same.
Yeah.
No, just give it a chance. I always say give it a chance.
Yeah. And I've seen the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I've seen the Texas Chainsaw remake. I've seen the Friday the 13th remake. Out of all those remakes of 80s, like I think this is one of the better ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I know I've already mentioned this, but the Thing for me is on top with Evil Dead, which I really want to do another episode, but just for that specific movie because it's just classic.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Evil Dead, man. Evil Dead. It's a cult classic for a reason.
Yes.
But
what did you call it? Blockbuster?
No, I said the Jaws. You
That's
call Jaws a cult classic. I'm like, it's not.
Yeah, I have to. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to actually along with him. Jaws. Jaws is considered the first blockbuster.
Sorry, Bells. Ahí no me puedes coger.
Okay. Somebody wants to say hi.
Oh,
Kitten.
Caddy.
Yay! Please don't get possessed by a Jedi.
¿Verdad que the original didn't have the chainsaw, right? It's in the sequel, if I'm not mistaken. ¿Verdad?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say that the sequel, of course, the sequel, no, the remake obviamente sabiendo el legado que tiene Evil Dead, they probably were thinking, okay, we're making the first one, not the second one. What the fuck do we do? Because we need to include the chainsaw because it's still like a visual iconography that you need to put in the remake, porque obviamente vas a apelar a la gente que le gustó las primeras dos, whatever. So what do you guys think of the fact that even though that's not included in the actual original movie, they felt the need to put it, because if they didn't, weirdos would have been like, hey, there's no chainsaw, even though it technically never shows up in the actual first one.
Oh, I don't mind.
Like they knew they needed to add the chainsaw because it's such an iconic scene. It's such an iconic, I guess, prop from the Evil Dead franchise.
Yeah,
it's kind of like if you were to adapt the origin story of Batman. There are certain details of Batman's origin story that was not in the original comic that told the story.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain details that were added in later retellings that are just so iconic that it's kind of weird not to include it, even if you were to do a reboot.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Even in the Ash versus the Evil Dead, they kind of kept true with the chainsaw. Not gonna lie, he had it as an arm throughout the whole series, but it's just because it's iconic.
Yeah,
just because of that, and they knew they were gonna develop a movie with that name, and without the chainsaw, people were gonna complain about it. People were gonna mention like, "Hey, where's the chainsaw?"
Yeah, there are two franchises that you just have to have a chainsaw: Evil Dead and the Texas Chainsaw
Massacre. And just because I had it in the name,
it's only because it's in the fucking title. Even though I think in the original only like 2 people get killed with chainsaws.
Yeah.
The rest were killed by like sledgehammers and meat hooks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh God! Did you guys see the Netflix one?
I did not.
I did not.
All I had to see was in the trailer is like, "Yo, bro, if you harm us, you're gonna get canceled."
That's kind of what killed it off for me.
That was the best scene for me. That was the only scene I was enjoying. Everything else was so dull and boring.
I did want to say, like, I was curious because, like, people were talking about it. It's like, this movie is shit. It tried to do what the recent Halloween movies did, but unsuccessfully.
Yeah. And
just out of curiosity, I just read the plot summary. Yeah. I read that the two survivors, one of them is suddenly and abruptly killed.
Yes.
Just to leave a final shocker for the end credits.
Yep.
And I'm like, I kind of want to see this scene, how it plays out. And it's like, it's the stupidest death of all.
It plays stupid.
I mean, I'm glad that they went for it and they took something that hasn't been milked enough, but to fuck it up that way, and now we're expecting worse.
What's the thing that they milked?
Okay, I'm saying more in the case of they milked Freddy Krueger a fucking lot. Jason, it's one that has way too many, like, not remakes, but movies.
Reboots, remakes, all of that. Yeah.
Everything. Mm-hmm. And not to mention that Jason also has like the weird, like Jason X or Jason in Manhattan.
I think the main reason hasn't worked for Chainsaw is because it had such a weird legacy. Because the first sequel is a farce. It's a literal farce. The director of the original came back and he's like, "There's no way I can top the original. I'm just gonna have fun with it." And he made like this weird farce of a movie.
Yeah.
So then the third one tried to be a reboot. It bombed. Mm-hmm. The fourth one tried to be a reboot. It bombed. It only got any airplay because Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey were in it.
Yep.
Then came the remake, and that was actually considered pretty good as far as remakes go.
Yeah.
It had a prequel, and then I think there was another one in between. There was a 3D one.
Yeah, it has a weird legacy because they keep either rebooting it, remaking them, or they made sequels. And you would think that like the Halloween franchise was weird and convoluted, but this one was even worse.
It's too. The Texas Chainsaw is to horror what Terminator has become to action sci-fi.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I agree.
And with both franchises, I'm like, guys, every movie's been diminishing returns. Why don't we just let it die?
It has brand recognition. That's the only reason. That's the only reason Netflix bought it.
Yeah.
It has brain recognition to the point where it's like, well, they probably bought it for pennies because no one wanted to see that movie because that movie has been shopped everywhere and no one was willing to
Honestly,
distribute
I
it.
was the type of person that was saying that, okay, can we stop doing the Halloween and Scream movies? Can we see something that we haven't seen in a while?
Yeah.
But by butchering Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which at least the first one was really good, and given the fact that most of these serial killers are based out of real serial killers, and this one is simple enough, they just shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I am happy to hear. Like, I'm not the biggest horror buff, so I'm not following as much. But I have heard that at least in like, there's been a bit of a renaissance because a lot of good indie horror movies have been getting more spotlight.
That is very true.
Like, I've heard good things about Witch. I've heard great things about Babadook.
Oh, Babadook was that one. I couldn't sleep for like a week, and that takes a while because I watch a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
But
I love the Babadook's design, though.
Yeah.
The Babadook's design, the noise was very, very reminiscent of The Grudge as well.
Oh no, that I can't. If I were every time if I hear a recording of that death rattle, I will be hearing it for nights. Like I'm trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I hear. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, my friend is highly, highly afraid of that noise, and I tend to do it a lot to her. I'm sorry, Alejandra, I love you.
Yeah.
That is evil.
But the indie game actually is winning now because I also see a lot of this short story, this short movie. It went so well on YouTube that they made a movie out of it. So Lights Out is one of them.
Yeah.
That
one that David Sandberg did.
There's another one that I think it's called Polaroid that also was really good. And that was an indie one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a short film.
Yeah, there's a bunch. You got Hereditary, you got Midsommar, you got Raw, you got The Killing of the Sacred Deer, you got The Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night. Long ass title, but yeah, you got a bunch of different ones, different languages.
It follows.
It follows so good.
It follows
I really like It Follows so much.
Like It Follows was a movie that just with the trailer, I got the gist of it. It's like, oh, this movie's gonna trigger my anxiety, something fierce.
Yeah,
it triggered mine for sure. Yeah. But I also do love Get Out and what was the other one?
Us.
No,
You is a show.
It's a show.
It's amazing how comedians often make great horror filmmakers.
Definitely, but I guess.
Which, speaking of comedy, like The Evil Dead is known, especially starting from the second one onward, of being perhaps the best example of horror comedy.
Yes,
because
they portray that super well in the show.
Yeah, they say they use the same principles of slapstick comedy, and a lot of scenes in the sequel are straight up Three Stooges-esque slapstick comedy. But they use that same principle of tension and release for their scares, so it works.
It's set up and payoff. It's classic.
Yeah, that's when I saw it with my girlfriend. I think that's what threw her off so much, because there were certain scenes where she's like, "Okay, these are obvious jokes. I'm supposed to be laughing, but as soon as I start laughing, something jumps out and scares me."
That's exactly how the show is. Nice. Like literally, you can have the most slapstick joke ever, and then you see a really like slow close up of this old, and you're gonna see it. I hope you guys watch it. This slow close up of an old lady, and she turns around and she's fucking Evil Dead.
Yeah,
and with the wide eyes and everything, going fucking crazy. So they portrayed that super well. I don't remember who was the one who directed the show, but they did so well to mimic the second and the third movie.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're getting, a lot of fans were waiting for a continuation of those movies, so they were definitely gonna deliver.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ash vs. Evil Dead has like 3 seasons.
Yes, it does, and it even has a collector's box. The collector's box include the actual show, but it includes Evil Dead 1 and 2, but it does not include Army of Darkness.
Probably for some legal bullshit.
That is exactly the reason why.
Probably.
Yes. Even though the show, I believe, doesn't reference the third movie at all. So even in the timeline, it wouldn't make sense, but it's more of a legal issue.
It only references it in that it ends in that we see him in present day,
Exacto.
while in the second one he ended up in medieval times. So we only know the third one happened because he's somehow back in present day.
Yeah.
Even though the original ending of Army of Darkness was that he went to a deep sleep, magically induced sleep, and he woke up after the post-apocalypse.
Exacto. Yep.
Exactly. And also, they made Ash very like playbooyish in the show. Just letting you guys know.
Yeah, I mean that
He
was
has
kind
that
of
in the third one. He's
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Polish, yeah.
I honestly don't remember the third one. I remember the first and partly of the second,
So
but
good.
that's because, of course, I've always been the type of the original is the best.
Yeah.
Stupid me.
Yeah. Hail to the king, baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is the other thing. That is another thing. These movies are some of the most quotable movies of all fucking time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lots of references. I know Samurai Jack likes to reference one of my favorite shows of all time. Samurai Jack loves to reference the "swallow your soul" bit.
Yeah.
Which came back in the remake actually. At the end, like the final demon, like just looks up to her and goes, "I'll swallow your soul," and he's like, "Swallow this motherfucker," and feeds him the chainsaw. Like I'm like, okay, that is badass right there.
It's so good, so quotable.
And this remake tries to go for some of the humor, mainly with the demons being just mean little bastards.
Yeah.
They always portray demons as mean little bastards because they tend to be, how you say it, I forget, like the word is coming and not coming out of my mouth really quick here, but they tend to kind of poke and probe and push your buttons a lot.
Yeah, they're very sadistic and
that's the word, sadistic.
But I think, and even though there were certain scenes where the demon started, he says naughty things and stuff, it's like it's not as funny as other movies because
it was funny in The Exorcist, but
yeah.
But yeah, this one was definitely going for a more serious tone, while still trying to homage some of the camp of the originals. But I don't think it quite got there up until the ending, and but that's because the ending was just so balls to the wall, batshit insane. It's like, oh shit, what the hell?
That's why I agree on if it changed the name and it was a standalone movie, it would have worked even better than having the Evil Dead name slapped behind this movie.
Super expectativa, so
yeah, because a lot of people might have called it a derivative or a ripoff, but you know, lots of great horror movies are a homage to some other horror movie.
Yeah,
definitely.
So they could have easily changed things around to, instead of the Necronomicon, X more to some other witchcraft ritual and.
Exacto. That the inciting incident para que saliera todo. Yeah.
But c'est la vie. It's how the cookie crumbles when it comes to business and cinema.
Claro, claro.
So between,
¿Qué iba a decir, Orengo?
No, I wasn't gonna say anything.
So between the two, sorry, which one would you guys consider the best in your book?
It's tough because the first one, it's the original. It has its charms, but it's just not like, if I'm gonna watch any of the old ones, I'm gonna watch The Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
But the original, the remake, once we get to the second half, it goes balls to the wall. It gets much more entertaining. It's much more gruesome. But, you know, like, it's not as charming. So it's really hard. It's like, I guess here's the thing. If I'm going to watch the original, I am probably going to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to watch the remake, I'd probably just skip to the climax because that climax is just so good.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we land on. I guess by that metric, I have to say that if we were to turn this into a versus or like a contest or something, the original is the winner, as it's usually the case.
I would say the same. I definitely like the original better because more of its charm, and I like the whole element of dissecting how that movie works and how it ticks, because you know you kind of see like a lot of the imperfections, but there's a charm to it because you see the effort involved. Not saying there's no effort in the remake, but there's more struggles to be had in the original one because you don't have a lot of budget, so you need to be very scarce and very specific to the things that you have to do, and you have to like think around how you're gonna do weird camera shots, like putting your freaking camera on a bicycle or putting your camera on like a trunk, like a wooden trunk, and just try to like run around a forest to get a shot. It's kind of freaking insane. They wouldn't do that shit in the remake. So that's why I dig it. Pero if I had to choose, I would just skip to the second one though, because the second one has all the elements that work in the first one, yet it has a very specific identity that Sam Raimi clearly wanted to convey, but he couldn't due to maybe, being a very inexperienced filmmaker or not knowing what he kind of wanted to get out of the Evil Dead movies. But in the second one, you kind of understand specifically the tone that he wants to go for.
Plus, it's just a hilarious and quotable movie.
Exacto.
Yeah, I agreed 100%. But in my opinion, actually,
yes. Okay.
Even though I always will be true to the original, I liked the remake a lot better.
Okay.
All right.
And it's solely because when I tend to want to watch horror, I like the more serious, suspenseful, and more meaningful, I guess, horror movie versus just, like you said, Josue, just 5 people trying to fuck around in a cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm personally more the opposite one. If I'm gonna watch a horror movie, I like the campy stuff. I like the monster movies. I like the cheesy stuff.
I guess it depends for me because I usually go towards the campy ones closer to October, and then if outside of Halloween and those spooky season, I tend to watch more serious horror movies, something that would actually keep me up at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's also that I'm a bit cowardly. I don't like to get scared. If I'm gonna watch a more serious horror, I like the slow burns that build up to something like The Shining.
Same. Yeah.
Which is why I'm interested in The Witch. I hear The Witch is just that. It's just like a slow burn.
Which is really good.
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
And I think my cat agrees.
I think your cat is possessed and it's trying to murder you.
Yeah. It is the Evil Dead. Yeah.
Oh, please don't tell me you're saying it.
You should definitely check it out since The Northman came out. Si tienes como un double feature.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been the same director, right?
Yes, sir. Same director.
Or at least I was gonna mention also, maybe it's because I am in the horror, I guess, area, because I am a horror actress. I work at a haunted house, and I tend to go towards more those creepy vibes and those scary vibes enough to scare people. I guess you can say I can take some notes in the most serious
for sure
types movies than the campy ones.
Yeah, of course.
Right, Midnight?
Yes.
This kitten is going to boost our ratings.
I saw that there's a sequel. They're gonna not a sequel, but they're gonna make a continuation of
what?
Evil Dead. It's called Evil Dead Rise, and it's gonna come on HBO Max on 2022. So this year.
Ooh.
Dope.
Yeah, so they shot it basically during the pandemic in 2021. They shot from June 6th through October 27th, 2021. The synopsis is very different. It says, in the fifth Evil Dead film, a road-weary Beth pays an overdue visit to her older sister Ellie, who is raising 3 kids in her own cramped LA apartment. The sisters' reunion is cut short by the discovery of a mysterious book deep in the bowels of Ellie's building, giving rise to flesh-possessing demons, thrusting Beth into a primal battle for survival as she's faced with the most nightmarish version of motherhood imaginable.
So, Evil Dead version New York or version LA?
LA, yeah. It's just happening in LA now, which is interesting because they tend to happen in a cabin in the woods. So it'd be cool to kind of see all of this happening in
the city.
In a city, yeah.
In a crowded place, in places where people can see it from the outside.
It da oportunidad que sean creativos con el espacio. Because you have more people, you have like cars, the road, they could probably have a blue beam in the sky. Yeah, Jose loves those. So, just a flesh beam in the sky filled with blood.
Okay, that's not a bad idea.
mean, you run the risk of making it look very phallic, but okay.
Yes, that's okay. Sacrifices must be made.
It worked for Alien, right?
Yeah, it worked for Alien. ¿Verdad? Sure.
Anything phallic works.
The interesting part is the director's not the same guy. So not Fede. It's this guy called Lee Cronin, And the only movie he's done is a movie in 2019 called The Hole in the Ground, which I have not seen. So I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's
The
apparently a
hole in the
movie.
ground.
It came out on
No.
Sundance en el 2019. And probably they threw it in Shutter because I don't know where the hell this movie is.
The Hole in the Ground. I
It's
think I've
called
seen it,
The Hole in the Ground. Yep.
but I probably okay.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm the first or the only horror fan that does this, but we tend
Okay.
to put movies in the background, see it. If it's boring, then it stays in the background. It's not something you're gonna watch.
Ah, that's so sinful. I don't do that, pero it's okay. I understand.
I mean, when it comes to horror movies, I guess you kind of have that comfort of the screens. And
Okay.
this sounds very psychotic, I know, but
No, it's cool. I mean, también
up in horror, you know.
they have varying degrees of quality too. So no vas a sentarte a ver algo que you know for a fact is gonna be trash. So
I mean, I can compare this to Open House, which was a Netflix original, if I'm not mistaken. That was bad. Oculus, if I'm not mistaken, also was Kristen Gillen,
probably I've heard of Oculus, pero no la he visto.
and that one's also a bad one.
Okay.
And
What's a good one? What's a good one you've seen recently?
Recently,
Sure.
I can only tell you the bad ones because I haven't seen any good ones recently.
That's tragic.
That's sad.
Josue, have you seen a good horror movie then? A
Recently,
recent one.
no,
Yeah, sure.
no, I can't say I have. Like I said, I don't really seek out horror that often.
Yeah.
I do have a short
Okay.
though, and I will send you guys. I don't remember right now the name, but I'll send you
Okay.
guys the link for that short. It's on YouTube, and it has to do with this woman who just randomly wakes up, and she's in this like hole in the ground, but she's in an inclination inside that
interesting.
hole in the ground, and
Okay.
she's cut and in pain, but she's trying not to fall inside the hole,
Okay.
right? But she sees on the other side that there's another person, but that keeps falling into the hole no matter what they do,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So every single time she falls asleep and she wakes up, she's doing the same thing. She's still trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And the suspense in that short was
Really
good. Because
Okay.
it's that, oh my God, I'm going to fall in the hole. I see people doing the same damn thing. I'm in pain. And then it starts raining, which makes
Okay.
everything slippery.
No,
Slippery.
that
Yeah.
doesn't help the situation.
No, para nada.
Para nada. And you don't know why.
Okay. Okay.
Another one I can mention, I haven't seen this one, but I do like the concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one of these like almost Squid Game situation that you're in this like hole in the ground and there's levels and there's
You were like the holes in the ground, huh? It's just is this like a fear that you have specific one?
If this is a fear, then that last episode of Moon Knight must have freaked you out. There's a whole
¿Verdad? Exacto.
sequence.
I haven't seen anything.
Okay,
You
sorry.
watch it too, yo.
Okay. Está bien. Perdón.
You might get a kick out of it as a horror fan.
Yeah, you might get a kick out of it because I didn't.
Hell yeah. But this one wasn't really a hole in the ground. This was like a game in a way. And there's different levels and there's a sort of elevator situation in the middle. And you're in these levels and people on the top are these really rich people that are eating like luxury food and having this banquet and whatever's left over, they bring it down.
Okay.
And down through the different levels.
¿Es la plataforma o esto es otra película?
Creo que la plataforma.
Sí, eso está en Netflix. I think I know what you're talking about.
The concept of it all, even though I haven't seen it, I absolutely love.
La plataforma del hoyo, creo que se llama. Yeah.
Se lo recomiendo para las personas que les gustan ese tipo de horror.
Okay. But I got 3 I can mention que salieron este año para ser más reciente. I saw Fresh, que esa está en Hulu, que es la que sale, everyone's favorite Winter Soldier. And, caramba, ¿cómo se llama la muchacha? Daisy Edgar Jones, es la otra. It's a movie where it starts out being like the typical romantic movie donde she can't get a good man, she's tried the online dating, que mierda es todo. De pronto Sebastian Stan shows up in a grocery store y entonces ella está como que, oh, he's kind of cute and dorky, and then they start going out, and then A los 30 minutos de la película, there's a twist. And then the movie turns into a horror movie. Completamente. It's interesting. La premisa se ha hecho millones de veces antes, pero maybe the execution is what makes it a little bit interesting to see. Y cómo se desenlaza, porque llega un punto que ciertos elementos pasan que you're thinking to yourself, ¿cómo ella se va a salir si es que se sale de esta situación? ¿Cómo ella se va a salir de esta situación? Está bien cool. Yo la piché cuando estuve en Sundance, pero después cuando salió en Hulu, el watch and wasn't that terrible. It's one of those movies que fueron relegados de Fox Searchlight, que ya no es Fox Searchlight, es Searchlight Pictures. Y pues como ya a Disney no le importa mucho ese estudio, they're just releasing everything on Hulu, terminó en Hulu. La otra que yo vi, que esa probablemente más gente la vio, fue X, que es la película A24, que fue dirigida por T.I. West, que he did The Invitation, que es una película que ha pasado en un culto. X is basically Texas Chainsaw Massacre, pero done A24 style. Es como que all these kids que están yendo a esta casa al lado de un rancho que rentaron de este don because they're going to shoot a porno because one of them wants to become like the next big porn actress y ser bien famosa, so they're shooting a porno and then weird stuff is happening en la casa de los viejos and then it kind of melts together into the plot and then hilarity and craziness ensues.
Still adding the sexy part of horror.
Yeah, porque tiene que ver con el plot y I wasn't a fan of it porque había momentos que I wasn't completely understanding si esto se supone que lo tomara serio o si se supone que yo estuviera riéndome. Porque hay momentos que son claramente comedic y otros momentos que claramente son pretty horrifying. Pero entonces como que el switch, cuando switchaba de esos dos tonos, a veces me confundía porque no sabía si el intention estaba ahí. Hence I got a little bit lost. Pero I must be an idiot because everyone that I know that loves horror loves the shit out of this movie. So I clearly didn't understand what the hell I was watching. La última que voy a sugerir, y esto es because no one's probably going to see it, a menos que la mencione, se llama... No. That's the true horror. Se llama You Won't Be Alone. Es una película que salió en Sundance y también salió en cines, pero not here at all. Fue distribuida por Focus Features. Yo la vi en Sundance. Le van a tirar en abril 1, along with Morbius, funny enough. Pero solamente tuvo limited release en Estados Unidos. So it's probably going to come in VOD eventually. It's like the most out there artsy one because it's basically about a witch trying to survive in the world of humans. Porque ella le pasa como un tipo de curse and she needs to adapt to humanity. Y es ver la trayectoria de esta witch tratando de conectar con los humanos, tratando de vivir en esta sociedad very Amish, porque fue en las tiempos de la guácara. I think it's like 17, 16, 15th century. It's like really long time ago. Y ver cómo todo eso se enlaza en un idioma que ni siquiera es en inglés. I don't even remember what fucking... It's like if I would sell this movie as The Witch meets Under My Skin meets Terrence Malick. That's the way I would sell this movie. It's really weird and artsy. Cuando yo vi el trailer y decía, okay, so esto es como que The Witch, pero probablemente it's gonna be like about actual witches, bien cabrón. Entonces, the way the film se enlaza, it's like, no, this is like a weird art house movie that's barely a horror movie. Pero it's an interesting coming of age movie. Eso fue lo que más me tomó de sorpresa. So there's some interesting movies, en verdad, de horror que están saliendo. Que grandes, chiquitas y todo entre medio. So, yeah, it's thriving. Hay cositas que la gente está viendo. Realmente, estas películas no hicieron chavo. So, my examples are trash, porque hasta X, que yo pensé que iba a hacer dinero, por el mero hecho que una película de horror en el cine, esta película duró 2 semanas y nadie que yo conozco la vio. So, I don't know. But then people go see some other random shit like, what the hell salió... bueno, Scream, people fucking went to... But claro, es Scream, I get it. It's a brand
milked franchise.
Sí, exacto. Sí, la gente reconoce ya eso. So I guess que maybe. Hasta también Halloween Kills, me acuerdo que también I didn't like it too much, pero eso, la gente went in droves to go see it in theaters. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a classic serial killer slasher.
Sí. No. Y la película, para la gente le gustó. I didn't like it. It looks... se siente que era como que they didn't know what to do y querían llegar al final.
They were pushing it. They were trying to milk it again. They were thinking,
from what
should
I've heard,
do a new movie or should we just do the same as we always do?
From what I heard, like the first after the success of the first one, it was the first of this new series. I mean,
Ujú.
It was decided it's gonna be a trilogy.
Y ese fue el mejor, porque al momento que tú ves la segunda, tú dices, esta segunda no compone nada a lo que está pasando.
Yep, it feels like what happens with a lot of trilogies with the second movie. They're like, we don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
Because at least you can argue that Jeepers Creepers, the second movie, was okay. But once you got to the third, that's where it just went.
¿Verdad? They have a third one. I never saw it.
Don't see it. Don't waste your time.
Está bien, cool.
Do not waste your time.
Pero what about Human Centipede? La segunda está par de cabrona.
I mean, yeah, but the third one was bad.
Sí, la tercera pilla al garete. Because it leaned too much into like the meta narrative. La segunda was threading the line where it was still kind of interesting because it was a guy inspired by the first movie. But then the third one, it's like bonkers
And then
weird.
you see the whole pattern of, okay, the first one was like 3 people, and then the second one was a couple more. Oh, now we have a whole chain.
Sí.
That kind of went overkill.
Yeah, sí. Bien excess. Pero pues, la gente de tripea. La gente tripea esa mierda.
Es lo mismo que pasa con Saw, que Saw ya de por sí los primeros 3 películas, okay, a lot of fucking gore, but then they kept going and going and going. There's a point where you kind of get tired of the gore.
I only watch it, that's a guilty pleasure, este franchise. Yo la veo por el chisme. Porque se siente como una telenovela de horror, donde siempre hay alguien que es el nuevo aprendiz de freaking Jigsaw, even though this man died 5 movies ago, but they're just new apprentices coming left and right, doing his bidding. Y es como que salió la nueva el año pasado, la de Spiral.
Jigsaw.
No, Jigsaw no, Spiral, la de Chris Rock. Que también, sí, que yo decía, ok, sí, porque Jigsaw, yo me la comí, pero yo estaba como que, mano, yo estaba fine con la séptima, whatever. Veo Spiral y yo digo, okay, so they're going back to the roots. They're going back a que esto sea como que like a detectivesca, crime thriller, buscando quién es, como si fuera un Seven, un Zodiac. Okay, cool. Then when I see it, it's fucking trash. And then it leaves it, like, hacen el mismo twist pendejo de la última without fundamentally understanding how to do a Saw twist. And it was a weird way to end it. Y yo me quedé como que,
I need to see this.
It's weird. It's bien weird. Like, se nota que ellos forzaron el final because I guess they wanted to do a sequel o simplemente querían hacer homage a lo que era Saw y buscaron como que esa parte específica para hacerlo. Pero the twist, you see it from like halfway through the movie, you know what the twist is. And I was praying como que, coño, esta película es mala, pero por favor que no sea lo que yo estoy pensando que es el twist. Y efectivamente ese es el twist. Y I'm like, so this movie has nothing to offer at all. Pero yeah, it's pretty fucking bad.
So long story short, people make better horror movies.
Existen. Es que la gente tiene que verlas.
Or at least better remakes. If you guys want to go along that line.
Sure, that's fair.
I mean,
I still am waiting for more about, I don't know if I'm the only one. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Sam from Trick or Treat. The only horror anthology that had to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so well done, so well put. The story is incredible. And you have an adorable little slasher.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
it was never milked. It was never used, even though it has a cult following.
Yo creo que no sé si fue porque no hizo chavo o algo, pero
give it a couple more years of the cult to grow, and Netflix is gonna try and like milk it.
Yes, they've been trying to do a sequel desde el 2013.
Oh shit, I was joking.
No, they've been trying very hard. They just haven't been able to, for some reason. Yeah, estoy buscando aquí possible sequel. Well, sorry, mentira. Michelle Dogry has been trying to do this in 2009, and to no avail. He's been able to succeed doing it. What else has this director done? Well, he did Krampus, so that's fine. He's been doing other shit. Yeah. He did Krampus.
Krampus is good.
Okay. This guy directed King Kong, Godzilla, the King of Monsters. So.
All right. So the best one out of that reboot trilogy.
Interesting. You say that. I like the first one the most, not the second one.
I'm in the similar camp to the first one. Like, I get that they wanted to focus more on the human drama, but it was just a little too slow for my liking.
Okay.
I think we definitely should have an episode talking about like the Godzilla franchise.
Oh, of course.
The whole franchise, me jodí.
Well, no, we're probably gonna have to focus on a couple of movies at
No,
a
porque no va a
time.
poder.
I mean, we can anticipate the date.
Also, you killed off the best actor in the first act.
True.
That's
Which
like,
is a weird choice.
yeah. And then you focused on a relationship between two actors who played siblings in a recent movie.
But that, you know, that only happens because you're in the zeitgeist in the moment watching it. Aquí a 10 años, people are going to see these movies, are going to be like, maybe they won't exactly know. Maybe.
I'll know.
Maybe.
Of course you'll know.
Every time.
A mí me tripea, es que como cogieron la premisa de lo que el director que hizo esa película hizo en su otra película que probablemente fue The Reason He Got Hired, about scarcely showing the monsters because it's about the human drama. Claro, the human drama is not that compelling. I'll give you that much. Pero también, too much of a good thing también puede ser malo. And when I saw King of Monsters, vi que se viró un poquito la tortilla para el otro lado, and I found it también kind of boring just watching creatures. Por eso es que cuando veo Kong vs. Godzilla, it's just insane, like firing so much shit at me que yo estoy como que fucking desensitized.
Well, that's what I wanted to see. Like King of the Monsters is like, okay, you got this budget to make these monsters look great. I just want to see them fight. Okay. Oh, we're seeing them fight. Good. That's all I wanted. Como, when I saw the reviews, it's like that. I was with that meme of like, critics are complaining that there's not enough human drama, too much monsters, and it's like the meme is like somebody like, that's exactly what we wanted though.
But what about Shin Godzilla? You know, it's not about the creature, it's about the human drama. Y lo hace súper bien también.
Oh yeah, but the difference is Shin Godzilla did the human drama right.
So tu problema no es que no quieras verlo, es que you wanted to see. Por eso es que yo digo, mi problema es que it's not that good, it's not that compelling, but it can be done and done well.
Oh yeah. Like Godzilla is one of those franchises that's been around for long enough that each movie can be its own experimental thing. All that it needs is for it to be executed right.
Yeah. Like when he had a kid.
He's had kids in several continuities,
I know.
Which one are we talking about here?
I remember the little baby one que tiene like bug eyes.
Yeah.
In
Manila, yeah.
Exacto. That's the one I remember the most. Very fun.
I remember the talking one.
Oh, verdad, there was a talking one. You're right. Que tengo un pana que es super freak de las películas de Godzilla. Like, he's super freak.
There was a talking one?
Yes.
Yeah, so the 70s, the 70s series got weird.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, I noticed.
A lot of the older ones, the first series, is on HBO Max, so you can marathon them if you want.
So, I would. Definitely.
I legit recommend the original, though. The original, obviously, the effects have not aged as well, but it's very poignant because of what
el
they're
dramón,
saying.
Exacto, el dramón está cabrón.
Yes. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
So to close things off, I wanted to ask you guys a question. What is your favorite horror comedy?
Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, Evil Dead 2 really is.
Yo creo que Evil Dead 2, pero voy a ser fair y voy a buscar un momentito aquí.
Because I have one that I don't know if a lot of people have seen, but I do love it so much that I recommend it every single time somebody asks me.
Tira.
As One Shot of the Dead. Yes, this is like...
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead is a great one. Sí, lo vi ahí.
But it's called One Shot of the Dead. It's Japanese, and... the way they made it at first, it's like a slow burn, so you're gonna like it, Orengo.
Okay, nice.
A little slow burn, but then at the halfway point, everything changes and you understand it better.
Sí, lo estoy viendo aquí.
There's one perspective halfway, then you have a different perspective of the situation because it's only based on basically you're filming a zombie movie. This person's filming a zombie movie, but then everything that's happening in the background in the second part is just...
Sí, ya leí la sinopsis. No voy a chotearla, pero ya la leí por encimita. Que la sinopsis te dice.
Oh, American Werewolf in London counts as a horror comedy?
I got a few ones here now that I'm seeing them. Si voy por bien reciente, I'll admit que Happy Death Day 1 está par de cabrona. La segunda está bien bonkers, pero la primera...
Well, Happy Death Day, is that basically Groundhog Day, but with a slasher killer?
Sí, con la tipa esa que está poquito de sobrevivir el Groundhog Day de horror. So it's pretty hilarious. Y está la otra que también, obviamente además de Shaun of the Dead, que es un clásico.
Of
What
course.
We Do in the Shadows,
Oh,
Taika Waititi.
I binged the series. I can't wait for the
También la
next season.
serie está buenísima. Ya, la serie está bien buena también. Surprisingly, because cuando yo vi que la anunciaron, yo dije, eso es una mierda. We're just gonna milk that dry. Cuando yo veo los primeros episodios, yo, oh my God, they kept this is basically as if there was a continuity to the movie. Esto es, like, super fiel a todo.
Oh, so there's a movie before the series.
Yes, you haven't seen the movie?
No, I've heard. I thought it was like a short, and then that short was sort of a proof of concept, and then they made the series.
It's a movie de Taika Waititi. Actually, fue no, él hizo otra película antes de que hiciera Thor Ragnarok. Él hizo, creo que The Hunt of the Wilder People, y después hizo Thor Ragnarok, pero antes de The Hunt for the Wilder People hizo What We Do in the Shadows, y él sale en la película también. Yeah, it's great. So
that series is just so funny.
Yes,
clever.
Yes,
the idea that
El Council. ¿Te acuerdas que there's a council that show up? I think at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
The council, those three que sale Taika Waititi, those three guys are the original ones que salen in What We Do in the Shadows, la película. That is why they show up in the show, because they ascended into becoming like famous vampires, essentially.
Yeah.
Honestly, I still have a huge ass list of horror comedies that I have to watch, and that was one of them.
Yeah, está bien dura. Bien dura. So good. And the show también, como dice José, está cabrón. But yeah, those will be the ones. Obviamente estas cosas como Zombieland, Krampus, tú sabes.
I mean, Zombieland was okay. I felt like it was too...
Well, I remember Zombieland being great at the time, but I haven't seen it since, so I don't know if it holds up.
Sí. What about Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
Yeah, Tucker Dale versus Evil is really good. There's another one called Odd Thomas, which is also very
along that same vein.
Yeah, around the same situation. Yeah.
Gremlins.
Of course.
Gremlins is one of those movies that helped create the PG-13 rating, I think, right?
I think so, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was that and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
I fail. My film history fails me.
Yeah, and it was like around that same time those two movies came out, both produced by one directed and the other produced by Steven Spielberg.
Exacto. Yep.
And so because he was just that powerful at the time, he basically went up to the MPAA and say, "Hey, why don't you just create an in between of PG and R?"
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Okay, Mr. Spielberg."
Why not both?
Exacto. The last one I'll mention, y solamente porque este hombre vino hace unos días atrás a Puerto Rico, Tusk de Kevin Smith.
Oh, Tusk.
That one I hear like it's very divisive. Like some people you either love it or you hate it.
I love it. It's one of his better efforts. Hay un canto que you'll know el canto donde la película simplemente no funciona, pero es porque he was just indulging on a cameo that he got and he just wanted to milk that cameo dry. Pero everything else in the movie que no tiene que ver con ese side story que pasa en like the second to third act, which I understand why it happens, pero simplemente it just comes out of left field y para la trama en seco. Everything else in the movie, phenomenal. It's really fucking good. It's really good. It blends the horror and the comedy. Hay momentos que you're genuinely terrified of what's happening, pero es tan fucking absurdo que you just end up laughing too. And it's just, it's great.
Mad Scientist
along that line, I forgot Tire.
¿Cuál?
Tire.
Tire, claro, yeah. No, it's Rubber, se llama Rubber. Pero
Rubber, yeah.
I call it Tire because it's the one how I remembered it.
Like this weird meta narrative of these people watching the show.
Yeah. Sí, que una escena que en la mitad de la película they just start referencing the movie itself and basically the genre, se va en un meta fucking commentary on everything. You make it, what the hell am I watching? That's great.
I mean, it's like it's one of those movies that you gotta watch higher or in a group or something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Bueno.
All right.
Anything else to add?
Yeah. Are there any thoughts? Like, ultimately, I think it came 2 in favor of the original, 1 in favor of the remake, and
Always the controversial one.
Always a controversial one. This is fun. I like comparing movies from older versions to the newer ones. See how
And
things
there's
have
many
changed.
more, and most of them are actually horror.
Yeah, horror has a lot of them. I want to shoot the next one to be with Batman. Batman
Okay.
is one of those franchises that just gets so many reboots that it's like we got to talk about
We're gonna have
how
a fight who's the better Batman.
We might.
Kevin Conroy and
That's
I
a
will.
cheater.
Let's stop here and have the fight for
Cheater.
the next episode.
Cheater. This doesn't count. Cheater.
Of course it does. Just because he's animated,
Cheater.
come on.
Cheater. He by technicality he has a movie. And you know it.
Don't be an elitist. He is the best Batman, and you know it.
I like him. I
Cuando
like
yo
him.
lentamente me retiro porque
Um,
voy a esperar para el día que nosotros tengamos esta pelea.
the question is like which movies are we gonna compare?
Obviamente, the Batman the movie 1966, and
Mhm.
I would say
Like I would love to, but I kind of like argue against it because that's less of an adaptation of the Batman character in the form of cinema and more just like a big budget version, long form episode.
well, who's the elitist now?
This is entertaining.
That's an interpretation of Batman. Granted, it was like the 60s interpretation of
Like,
Batman, but
I'm sure, like if you guys want to tackle all of the first Batman movies, 60s, 89, 2000s, and now this new one.
I mean, yo las he visto todo y me las sé de atrás para atrás. So it's gonna be Bells la que va a sufrir si no las ha visto todas.
Yo creo que yo voy a sufrir porque hace tiempo yo no veo
There
varias.
you go. I mean, yo me las sé para adelante y para atrás, so I'm gonna be fine there. So
Those
I mean,
old
you're
Batman
decent,
movies are a
of course.
comfort movie.
yeah, I love
They're
Batman
a
too much.
comfort food.
Yeah, they are. Yo la voy por joder a veces. So yeah.
All right.
Let's see when we can do that because I have a feeling that might be like a couple more episodes ahead.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
That's fine.
It is.
Yeah.
And well, I guess if we've got into multiple digressions. I think that's a clear sign that we've exhausted our thoughts on this series.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us as usual. Yo soy Josué. You can't catch me on anything because this is all I ever do. I am going to now go into the basement of this apartment I have. You do the math.
Are you gonna read a special book or something?
We don't.
Well, the thing is, I accidentally did, thinking it was a recipe book, and now I got some demons to take care of. So
Aw. Good luck
Go
with
ahead.
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to make my girlfriend a nice dinner, and now I gotta gouge out the eyes of these demons and
Awesome.
before they swallow our souls.
Fire. Sprinkle a little bit of adobo on it.
The cat was trying to murder your hand.
You're trying.
Bells, where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me in Instagram at Libros de la Bruja. You can find me here whenever we decide to post live or recorded. Hijas del Sam monthly. In Get Fucking Show every Tuesday at 7. I am your fellow news anchor, if you say. And you can also follow my group, Female Cosplayers Puerto Rico, on Facebook.
Hey, Orengo.
Yes, you can find me here with you guys in Cine Nerds. You can find me in After School Club. You can find me in The Movie Guy. You can find me in Cinema Podcast, which I haven't done an episode in a while, but I'll fix that. You can also find me at Subtitles Required with John. And that's it. I've been doing reviews. I've been watching movies. I'm going to see if I watch Picando Alante y The Northman to have some reviews up. Porque no tuve break de verla de antemano, so I'm just going to see them in el cine. But yeah, I have Twitter, I have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I do my reviews on Twitter and on Instagram. And I write for this page called The Nerdy Basement. So I tengo los reviews que yo hago las películas. I'm going to be reviewing like a weird indie movie in a few weeks. So my review will be up there. Yeah, that's it. Oh God, the cats.
I'm trying. She's attacking.
The cat is on attack mode. It is possessed. It will swallow your soul.
I think you reading the Necronomicon kind of affected my child.
Sí, yo creo que sí.
Nah, cats are just always demonically possessed.
Mírala. There you go.
Look at that. That is the face of a murderer.
Mm-hmm. Face of Evil. Ay, Dios mío. Look at that. Tito.
Okay, Lex, let's do it.